Hey everybody, welcome back to watchNcarry. Today's video we've got another mod for you. This one is coming off of my friend's G-Shock that he's had for a couple of months. And I have the exact same model, and I added an orange filter to mine, and he wanted to have the same done. And a few people have asked me how I did it, so I'd figure I'd film his mod, so that way you guys can follow along. So this model here is the, see if I can get that in focus, the GD350. I believe if you go to the website, there's an additional couple letters after the 350, but this is the one that comes with the gray strap and case, and then you have the standard positive display dial with a little bit of green here highlighting the month and day of the week. So very cool design, and actually one of the cool features of this is it has a vibration built into it for, you know, your alarms and your timers. So for this particular model, what we're going to be doing is just opening it up, and we're going to add an orange colored filter. I have this one right here, and we're going to be covering that entire bottom display, but leaving the top left and top right windows as is. So as always, just make sure you have a soft surface to work on. This is a silicone mat. And we have a nice raised bezel here, so I don't have to worry about that glass getting scratched. And we've got 4 screws here on the back to remove. Now, in terms of parts for this video, go ahead and check out the description below. I also put my Instagram in there, and if you guys could check me out there and see some of my other mods and everyday carry items, that'd be greatly appreciated. It's also the place that I'd recommend you contacting me if you'd like me to modify your own Casio. Just send me a direct message there on Instagram. Okay, so we've got those 4 screws loosened here. And we'll just set those off to the side. Check out these little plastic tongues here that you have on the back. Very, very comfortable to wear this watch because of those. So we'll get this case back off. You want to go ahead and remove this gently because sometimes the O-ring will stick to the back of the case back, and you don't want to stretch that. So in this case, it comes off nice and clean. And as I remove parts from the watch, I'm going to set them up left to right, so that way it's easy for you guys to follow, and then we just go in the reverse order when it comes to reassembly. Okay, you have this piece right here. Take note of some landmarks as you remove things. So in this case, we have these little nubs that are pointing up towards us, and those nubs are absent on the backside. And we've got the O-ring here, so carefully remove that. And now we have the module. So 12 or 6 o'clock, it doesn't really matter which one. You're just going to take your lug tool or something similar. So this one has kind of like a fork end, and we're going to gently lift up. There we go. There's our module. Set that off to the side here. And this is kind of where you should be at in terms of your parts that you've disassembled. Okay, now in some Casio watches like the World Times, the AE 1200s and 1300s, it's a little bit easier because this part right here that divides the display is called the masking, and usually you can remove those, and that just makes it easier to work with. In this case, at least when I did my own Casio, I wasn't able to remove this, and I don't really see how this is secured in place. probably what you would have to do is loosen these pushers. So there's a little retention C-clip in there. Probably get that pusher out, and then you could probably get the silver part out and remove the masking there. For me, that is good to do. That's fine, but it's just a little bit longer. It's easy enough to just kind of take a filter, put it over the display, kind of trace out your shape and where you need to be. So what I'm going to do now is grab my orange filter. The name for this is in the description below, but this is called Chrome Orange by Lee Filters brand. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly use my duster here to get off as much of that dust as possible, so that way I don't track it into the case. All right, I'm going to lay that down. And obviously this is too large, so you want to get something that's large enough where you can kind of draw and trace where you need to go. And so in this case, we're going to be putting this filter again just there at the bottom, covering that big window. There's a couple tricky spots here that you have to pay attention to when cutting this out. So you'll notice that right here we have a little bit of a bend, and then it bends back up, and then it kind of curves the other way. So this is probably going to be the trickiest part to trace, okay, because you want to make sure that your filter covers everything, but it's not going to be overlapping into the other areas that we want to keep normal. So we'll just lay this filter down. And then I'm going to grab a fine tip Sharpie here. And then I'm just going to gently trace where I need to cut out here. So I'm going to hold the filter here and just roughly kind of trace out the shape that I need to cut. Move this filter just a little bit lower. Okay, it can be a little bit larger than you need because we can always shorten it later. Okay, so I think that's good for starters. I'm going to take my case back here, just go ahead and cover that up to limit the amount of dust going into that case. And let's go ahead and cut our filter. So I'm not using gloves here. Some of you do. That's fine, but I'm just making sure not to touch the part of this filter that I'm going to be putting into the watch. Okay, so we'll try this out and see how this fits. So before we do that, let's go ahead and just again dust it off a little bit. I'll wipe down some of these other marks that are on the filter. I'm just using a microfiber cloth here. Okay, let's bring back our watch and see how this one looks. Okay, so I got pretty good coverage here, left and right. Left and right, bottom looks good. This tricky part over here, let's see if we're covering. So probably a little bit more coverage here on top. Let me see if I push this up a little bit. Okay, that looks good if I do it that way, but then it starts kind of overlapping into this window. So I probably need to trim just a little bit thin here on the right top part of the filter. So we'll take this out. And let's trim this one more time. So just a little bit of trial and error. Okay, so I cut off just a small part there. There we go. Okay. So now if we take a look here, left looks good, right looks good, bottom is good. And then the tricky part here, if we push this up just a little bit, good, we got decent coverage here, leads over here, and it doesn't go into this window up here, which is nice. So the filter is having good coverage. It's still a little bit too high up here on the right. I'm worried it might get pushed up into this window, so I'm going to trim just a tiny bit more here on the top, but I think we've almost got it. Okay, have the filter out again. Okay, much better. So perfect. So left looks good, right looks good, bottom looks good. We have good coverage here right around that curve. Okay, you want your filter to obviously overlap beyond the open window. You don't want it to be the exact same size. And now I need to look for, while I have it in this position, where am I going to put my glue tape? Because I'm going to cut out little thin strips of double-sided tape to adhere the filter to this masking. So I can put some over here on the left and the right because there's some nice thick areas there, and maybe a little bit here on the bottom. I don't think I'm going to put any glue tape here on the top because these bars here are really, really thin compared to the other ones. And so what happens with the glue tape is if it's really thin and you push everything down when you reassemble, sometimes that glue tape can spread out with that pressure, and then you have the tape kind of, you know, getting visible in one of these windows. So I'm going to try to avoid putting it where it's thin and just apply it here on these three corners, 1, 2, and 3, where we have a nice thick area. Okay, so I've set my orange filter to the side there. Let's go ahead and grab our glue tape. Now, if you want to know the details on how to apply the glue tape, I have a separate video for that down below, but the brand I'm using is Super Glue Tape by T-Rex. Okay, and so this comes off in a thin strip like this. It's clear. It just has a white backing for the non-stick, and then once you peel that off, it's sticky on both sides. So let's cut a small strip here. Okay, so I have a little bit of glue tape here. Okay, I think that should be good. Now when I apply the glue, I don't want to put it all the way to the edge of the masking because again, you don't want it to spread into the visible area when you squeeze everything back together during reassembly. So I'm putting it probably like a millimeter away from that free edge. Let's go to the opposite side here. And you can just lightly tap it down to properly adhere it. And then the glue tape itself is flexible, obviously, so you can kind of spread it a little bit if you need to cover like a millimeter or two beyond where you laid it down. And then we'll do one more here at the very bottom. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Okay, one more I think I might place, even though I said I wasn't going to do it here on top. I think between this part and this part, it's a little bit thicker than the rest of these. So I can probably put just a dot here at the very top. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Okay, next we're going to take out any possible dust that might be here on the inside of the case. It helps if you have a darker background, so that way you can kind of check for those white dust particles. Take my blaster here, my duster, and just kind of go from the bottom while holding the watch upright. And that should allow the dust to fall down below. Okay, so I think I got any visible dust parts out. Okay, so I'm going to turn this upside down. I'm going to take our filter and again gently dust this before putting it in. Check for any fingerprints as well. And if so, just use your microfiber cloth to wipe those off. Okay, then we're going to gently lay our filter Okay, don't pat it down yet because you need to align it before pushing it onto the glue tape. Okay, so let's check our sides again. The left looks good. It's right on that tape, on the glue. This bend here is well covered. It's getting very close to this open window here in the top, so I'm going to just tap it down just a bit. Okay, then it covers this bar here across really well. And then touches those two pieces of tape as well. So I think this is perfectly aligned. We'll go ahead and just take something a little bit blunter with the nose there and just lightly tap on your filter. Just because filters are easy to kind of get crinkly and kink, you want to go ahead and probably apply the pressure in your filter from one side to the other, so you're kind of pushing, you know, any slack that might be in the filter away. So I'm starting here at the bottom and then here on the right and then the left and then the top here. Okay, so that looks good, just light pressure there. Let's go ahead and check one more time. The left looks well covered, top looks good, right, and the bottom, everything looks great here. Okay, so now comes the simple part, which is reassembly. So we're going to, once again, use our duster here, turn your watch upside down, check it against a contrasting background to see if you can see any dust. Okay, so I think we got almost all of it out there. Now we're going to take our module and do the same thing here. Take your watch and flip it over. Make sure you're putting your module in the correct orientation. Now with some of these pushers, you have these stems that kind of come in from the pushers, and sometimes those stems need to be pushed back out. In this case, there's a little bit of spring retention there, so I don't have to worry, they're already pushed out, but just be aware of that. You have this tiny clip here at the bottom left here that you kind of have to lift up a little bit, just temporarily. Then slide in your module. Now it's not going to fit completely flush in. There are these little tabs that go right beside the button that need to be pushed in. So what you're going to do is put a little bit of pressure here with your finger, and then look for where that stem comes from the button. Where you push that in, there will be something that kind of pushes in on the module. Look for where that makes contact with a piece of metal that's thin. So that's this thin piece right here. And while you're putting pressure with one finger, pull inward on that little tab. And then do that all the way around the watch, to all 4 buttons. And as you do that, you will feel the module sink in. There we go. Once you feel it sink in, go ahead and repeat again for all 4. There you go. And then just kind of check to make sure that it's sitting nice and flush there. Then you can go back to the silver tab that's here at the bottom left here and just kind of push that inward. Or actually, no, leave that up for now because we still have a couple of other parts to put in. Okay. Now, this is held in pretty snugly right now, so I don't actually have to put the case back on to check my work. I can actually just put a little bit of pressure here with one finger, and then I'll flip this over and take a look. And so there you go. There is your filter placed over the bottom. So once you do that, go ahead and kind of check at an angle the entire area that's covered with the filter. You want to make sure that you don't see any of this gray color display to the sides, because that means you didn't fully cover it. So that looks good. Then you want to check the other windows that were not covered with a filter and just make sure that you don't have any orange that's bleeding into there, so that looks good. Okay, check for any dust or fingerprints that might be on your filter, so I don't have any here. So now that everything looks good, I can go ahead and flip this back and reassemble everything. So we're going to take our O-ring next. Okay, make sure it has a nice little glisten in the light, which means that it's well lubricated. If not, use 100% silicone oil and just lay that down in the trough that's already been marked out for that ring. And then just lightly tap that down so it's sitting snugly in there. Okay, next you're going to take this piece. Okay, again, remember those little nubs here are going to be pointing towards you, and you're going to lay it down in this orientation. As you lay it down, you'll notice that this part here on the right will pop up through the hole. There's this little silver tab here that needs to go on top of that. Okay, so there's that little tab. Now you can kind of bend that tab over. Okay, another piece will pop out of this hole and the remainder as well. So once it looks properly aligned, go ahead and take your case back. Make sure it's in the right orientation, such as this. Remember, this is the 12 o'clock up here. So this is your orientation. If you don't get the orientation right, the speaker, which is this part, will not make contact with this spring, and then you won't have any sound and probably no vibration with this particular model. So we're going to go ahead and line up our holes. And then once they're in line, push and hold that position. You don't want to shift the case back around to find the alignment, because as you do that, you might roll that O-ring off of its track. And then the water resistance won't be as secure. Go ahead and lay your 4 screws. Doesn't matter which order you put them in. Okay, we're going to loosely secure these down. Okay, once they're kind of loosely put in, go ahead and check the seam between the case back and the case here. Make sure you don't have that O-ring visible. If it is, that means it's being pinched and you need to realign it. And then now you can fully tighten the screws. Okay, give a quick wipe the case back here. That looks great. And then let's go ahead and take a look at our final result here. It's a nice matte gray finish, which I think plays really well with the orange. Okay, let's go ahead and check our functions here. So bottom left, listen for a sound. So sound is good, bottom left is good. I like to go to stopwatch next, bottom right, top right. So 1, 2, and 3 all work. Go to your main time, press and hold the top left. Okay, if you see that wording pop up that says hold, that means that that button is working. And then lastly, our backlight here, which is going to be the big G here at the 6 o'clock. There you go. So the original green that's on that factory display without the filter will still show up with the orange placed on top of it. But the bottom now will show up as yellow because of the orange filter that was placed there. The top remains the same in the blue, but kind of a nice 3-color design here with the backlight, yellow, green, and blue. Probably one of the best backlights I've seen on these digital Casios because I think you have 2 light sources coming in here from the bottom, which really helps to illuminate things. Okay, let me give you guys a quick wrist shot. All right, and there you go. Your own custom G-Shock with Lee's chrome orange filter placed on top. Again, just really nice contrast, I think, with that matte gray finish. Other colors I think that might work well. Probably your greens would look good. A nice yellow plays well against the gray. I've seen other people do things where they convert the analog clock, or not, this is not an analog clock, the indicator window into a negative display. So lots of different options you can choose, but this is just a very simple one here, which uses one color filter. All right, guys, if you have any comments or questions, please put them down below. If you could subscribe to this channel as well as my Instagram in the description, that would be greatly appreciated. As I mentioned before, I have lots of videos or lots of other photos of my mod work in Instagram, and it's also the place where I'd recommend that you contact me for quotes and turnaround time for any particular mods that you would like me to do for you. And as always, guys, have fun, and I will see you on the next one.